for Plymouth Township Treasurer. I have a lot of material I want to cover tonight, so I'm going to try not to blast through it too much, but as Carol said, it'll be available on the Plymouth Concerned Citizens website. So I'll do a little bit of my own housekeeping before I get to the agenda. So the alligators appear to be gone. So now the objective is to drain the swamp. And what does that really mean? Well, to me, that means whenever possible, elect ethical people who know what they're doing. I happen to know what I'm doing. I'm a professional treasurer. I have some, questions here that I think need to be pondered before November 8th. I know that Plymouth Township is primarily Republican, but partisan politics really make a difference to the community at the local level. I'm not so sure it does. I think that there are some statutory duties that are statutory duties, and it doesn't really matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. You still have to do them and do them well for everyone. Now, do candidates for office run on a party platform that truly reflects their ideals and what they stand for? Well, maybe. Sometimes it's just a strategy to get elected. At the local level, does being a Republican candidate mean that there will be fiscal transparency and accountability? Here's a reminder, the incumbent candidates are all Republican. Would you vote for someone just because of party affiliation? Might it not limit your pool of talent, assuming that there is a pool of talent? Or would you vote because the candidate is qualified and experienced and represents solutions to more day-to-day issues? Other things to consider when you're looking at a treasurer. Back in the 80s when I first started, for an inexperienced treasurer, it took about 3 to 4 years to master the job, and then you'd start the election process all over again. It was less complicated back there. There's been a lot of statutory incentives and exceptions to the rule to manage, and changing legislation has increased reporting requirements. Excuse me. Candidates that run for public office aren't really required to be equipped with the necessary skill set to run for public office, and sometimes it produces less than desirable results, as we all know. Now, it takes on average 3 years for an experienced treasurer to go into a larger treasury and master that more complicated environment. There's a lot to know: laws, organizational structure, business rules, and available tools in order to go into an environment and do process improvement. This is me. I changed the picture especially for you, Gary. So this is my background, my education, skill set. These are the places that I've worked. And one of the interesting things about all the places that I've ever worked is that they all have finance directors and accounting staff. This is everything that I know how to do in summary form. And all of these items, when done well, contribute to the fiscal health of the community. My agenda: hot topics, treasurer candidates, township financial health, and budget preparation. So when you compare Mr. Clinton and me, you'll see that I've been a registered voter for over 40 years. I'm a former certified level 2 assessor. I chose not to renew my certification because I didn't think it was necessary. And I have over 30 years experience in local government as a municipal treasurer. So I have a well-established history of public service in local government. My business focus is local government, both city and township. That's where my experience has been. Mr. Clinton's business focus is corporate finance and sales. Although the law doesn't require any candidate to have a requisite skill set to run for treasurer, managing municipal treasuries has become increasingly more complex over the years. And there's also a big difference between finance treasury and local government than in private sector business. Meet Justin. Justin has an MBA in finance, just like Mr. Clinton does, and he's been working in business a lot of years. His family owns a variety of businesses, so he's familiar with business. So my question to Justin that I'd like to have him answer is, did your education and experience in private sector business prepare you in any way to work in local government as a treasury manager? And the reason why I'm asking is because Justin is now employed by the city of Detroit in treasury. Please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for having me here. Mary found a very flattering picture of me up there. But I asked Mary to include me in this presentation because I thought I could provide some insight into some of the challenges that I experienced jumping from the private sector to the municipal sector. As Mary said, I have my MBA. I've worked in the private industry most of my life, and for the past couple of years, I've worked for the city of Detroit as a supervisor in the special analysis unit. And just going through some of the things that I had to go through and some of the challenges, I've worked really closely with Mary for the past couple of years, and even with all the experience that she has and everything that we've done together, I still feel like I've kind of only retained about 10% of what it takes to run a treasury. So really my point is to kind of encourage everyone to ask questions, to make sure that you find the right candidate to be the treasurer. And know based on my experience that the candidate behind me has the pedigree and the skill set to get the job done. So I do appreciate it, and I'll be here afterwards too to answer any questions that there may be. So thank you again.
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate it. All right, hot topic 2. How would you rate the financial health of Plymouth Township? If you were here at my last presentation, you've seen this slide before. So we're going to go through it. We're going to kind of answer these questions. How would you know? How would you measure it? It's been bantered about that Plymouth Township needs a forensic audit. Well, is it really necessary? In my mind, it's sort of like it's a real thing, but it's kind of a buzzword that's been thrown around because we know that things need to be fixed. But do we really need a forensic audit? Because this is kind of what you would see if you were going to have a forensic audit. This is, when you go through Township Hall, you don't really see computers smashed around and files everywhere, at least not yet. But forensic accountants work on criminal or civil disputes, and they conduct investigations, and they actively look for signs of fraud and dig deeper into records and databases instead of doing the samplings that you typically would in an audit. So, and they also are going to anticipate some criminal action. This is just forensic audit basics. I don't really want to go through this, but this is sort of a step-by-step what a forensic audit would look like. So, what do you need to know? The township fiscal year is January through December, and an annual audit is required by all charter townships, every single one. The primary purpose of auditing and reporting requirements is to maintain the confidence of all interested parties, that includes citizens, in the integrity of the record keeping and the financial reporting of the township. So the audit helps to assure compliance with the law, and that the systems are used to adequately safeguard our assets. It's also to assure that we are complying with the state uniform chart of accounts, and that the financial statements are fairly stated according to GAAP, which stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. So the auditing firm should provide the local unit with constructive recommendations. Number 1, to improve efficiency, safeguard assets, make budgets more useful to management, and ensure the financial reports are fairly presented. My question, knowing that Plant Moran did it, the audit, would a reputable auditing firm like Plant Moran really risk its business and intentionally issue a false, unqualified opinion? I don't think so. So, I would recommend asking the existing auditors leverage that relationship to conduct a more thorough sampling and to make recommendations to the new township board on ways to improve management practices and internal control. That means update and implement appropriate policies and procedures. Let's not talk about it, let's do it. So to me, it's not productive to churn up old issues for the sake of churn, especially when the majority of problems are likely related to data integrity that stems from improper procedures. And I know that the cash receiving system is one of those areas. So this was one of the slides I had in my last presentation. Policies and procedures are king. They're the business rules, what to do, how to do it. It serves as a method of internal control, provides clear direction, establishes boundaries, and serves as a measure of performance. The purpose and value, the most important things that everyone's been complaining about all along, are related to the items in bold. They foster credibility and trust. It allows us to meet all legal standards. It protects the organization. We avoid litigation and mitigate risk, and we prevent, detect, and respond to criminal conduct if there is any. That's the purpose. You've got to have them. Policies and procedures, expertise, and accomplishments. In every municipality that I've ever worked in, I've had to develop, revise, update, and enforce policies and procedures to meet statutory requirements and sustain best practices. Can't live without it. Some of the examples, surely they're not the only examples, but all policies and procedures related to cash or data integrity. It's critical. Without those procedures, especially related to cash and data integrity, when everything snowballs down to your financial reporting, garbage in, garbage out. So what is the purpose of governmental financial statements? It's to demonstrate accountability. In government, it's to demonstrate accountability. Well, how do we do that? Well, now we do it in two ways. We have individual fund financial statements, and we have government-wide financial statements. So when we have the individual funds, we're showing accountability by fund. And when we have government-wide financial statements, we're saying, what shape are we in overall? So look a little bit at individual fund reporting. Well, what is a fund? Well, it's money put in a separate bag for a specific reason or purpose. It's also to demonstrate accountability. So when we do reporting, at the end of the day, we show that what we're supposed to spend that money on is exactly what we spent that money on. So in the private sector, financial activity is to show profitability. So it's done differently. In public sector, it's to show accountability. So we use fund accounting, and it emphasizes accountability. So when we report activity in a separate fund, as I said before, we're demonstrating that the revenue was spent for that specific purpose. Anything that's unspent at the end of the year goes into fund balance as restricted, committed, or assigned. So what is the general fund? It's everything that's not in another fund. That's what it is, simply. It's just everything that's not in another fund for a specific purpose. So it's just your general operating money. But the important thing to know about that is that, let me go to the next one. Oops. I lost my train of thought on that, so I'll get back to it. So my next slide is that these are all the different types of funds. So there's 3 broad categories: governmental, proprietary, and fiduciary. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on that. I just want you to be aware that there's a lot of different types of funds. So governmental funds are primarily tax supported. There's a few other things that go into those funds, but they're primarily tax supported. So examples of governmental funds are the general fund, special revenue funds, capital projects, debt service, and permanent funds. We have proprietary funds, which are self-financed through user charges. Those are called internal service funds and enterprise funds. So the water and sewer fund is an enterprise fund. Then we also have fiduciary funds, which are, it's money that's held in trust or as an agent for others. So the tax fund is an example of an agency trust or an agency fund. So what are the key takeaways? Take the time to learn about all the township's funds, not just the general fund, even though we consider that to be the most important, at least from a public perspective. All of them are important to understanding the township's financial health. So what is fund balance? Well, in general accounting, we know that assets are the things that we own, and liabilities are the amounts that we owe others. The difference between assets and liabilities in private sector is called equity, and in government it's called fund balance. So government reports assets and liabilities as current assets and liabilities, usually within 30 to 60 days. So the resulting amount of fund balance represents amounts to be spent. But fund balance needs to be understood in terms of its constraints. So everything that's in fund balance is not going to be spent just to be spent. So there are some reasons why, because we're reporting at everything as current, we may have things that need to be paid, outside of that 60-day range. So GASB 54 tells us we have to report it in these 5 ways. So really the only thing that we consider to be like our spendable money is 4 and 5 and possibly 3, depending on what the governing body does to recommit or reassign those fund balances. So when you're looking at the government's health, it's really what's left over, because everything else is committed. Takeaway, fund balance is the measure of health of an individual fund. So you have to know how constrained fund balance is to know how healthy the fund is. The balance may or may not be freely available to the township, and I already said you need to understand how it's constrained. So why is knowing about fund balance important? Well, anyone who uses the financial statements is going to look at fund balance to identify available liquid resources that can be used to repay long-term debt, reduce property taxes, add new governmental programs, expand existing ones, or enhance the financial position of government. So that's why we look at it. How much fund balance should the township have? Well, that question was kind of asked at the League of Women Voters Forum on June 30th. And I think it went something like, well, if you have like $14 million budget, is $3 million adequate fund balance? I said it was, and Mr. Clinton said it was not. So now we're going to talk about what's adequate fund balance. So there's no single answer to the question, and we know 0 is not an option. But there is an appropriate range of fund balance, and the right amount is dependent on a number of different factors. Risk tolerance, so how much risk can a township tolerate? You know, does it have a risk of natural disasters? Is there some immediate capital need that it has? Is the state going to cut state revenue sharing again? We don't know, but these are some of the things that you'd look at in terms of risk factors. Is there something that we're saving for? We have a large purchase coming up. And then, this is not too much of an issue for Plymouth, but in some of the other townships that have different fiscal years, the timing of when the tax receipts come in and how things are budgeted makes a big difference. So as the size of the budget grows larger, so does the minimum level of fund balance. That's pretty common sense. I won't go into anything else here, but it's on the slide. So these are the general guidelines related to how much is enough fund balance. So most governments will be within the 10 to 20% range. Small governments will be between 20 and 25, and a large government might have 5 to 10. State of Michigan uses 13%. Calculation down there for the general fund, 0.21. Based on there we go. So, given those numbers, 3 divided by 14, we're at 21%. Not bad. But you have to look at it in terms of how it's constrained. And then there are other financial indicators used to determine how healthy the township is. These are some of them, and they're beyond the scope of this presentation, but they're in summary format, so you can read all about that. Key takeaway. It is important for the governing body to discuss and agree upon appropriate fund balance target. You need to develop a fund balance policy. The appropriate level will vary greatly between communities because their circumstances are all different. But best practices is to have a range of appropriate fund balance. You set parameters regarding what's too little and what's too much, because if you have too much fund balance, everybody's screaming, why are you taxing me so much? You've got this huge number in fund balance. What's going on? Okay? That's why it's important to have a range. Budget preparation. Will you pass those out for me, please, Justin? So, Justin's going to pass out a document that really has the statutory duties of all elected officials in the township. Everybody thinks that, you know, the treasurer's supposed to do everything, and that's not the case.
We don't think that.
Right. But it's good to know what your elected officials are supposed to be doing. Okay? So how many people knew that the supervisor is actually the budget officer? Did you know that? It's true. And guess what? The clerk is responsible for the general ledger and for preparing financial statements. What do you suppose that is? Internal control, separation of duties, checks and balances. We do not want the fox in the hen house. That's why we do this stuff. It's not just because we want to divvy everything up and then put it in statute. There's a reason for it all. So, it takes a cooperation of everyone to prepare a budget. And there should be a budget manual that says who's doing what, when, why, all that stuff. These are the usual steps of a budget process. I'm not going to read it all. You can go to the Charter Township Act. There's a lot of it in there, but this will get posted so you can read through it. It just tells you who's supposed to do what, when, by statute. So understanding budget. It serves a different purpose in government than it does in business. So In private sector, it's a bottom line or minimum level of profitability. For us, we have an appropriations budget. The budget is a legal authority for management to provide a given level of services. It's illegal for us to spend more than budget appropriations. PA 2 of 1968. Can't do it. What does it mean to have a balanced budget? The projected ending fund balance is positive. Simple as that. Now, in any one year, it might be appropriate for expenditures to exceed revenue. I mean, sometimes you have to dip into fund balance. We shouldn't be doing it all the time. So in some years you'll dip, and some years you'll add to it. Importance of the budget. It's the most important financial planning tool that a governing body has. It shapes the financial direction of the community. So how does budget activity fit in with the township's overall goals and objectives? Does Plymouth Township have a strategic management plan? Anybody know? I'd be willing to bet that it doesn't. I'd be willing to bet that we really need one. So is this level of service sustainable over the long haul? I don't know, has anybody done financial forecasts or multi-year budgets? Well, you've done everything here, we know that. So here's some relevant local government budget related links. These are excellent documents. It tells you all about budget preparation. Too much material for this presentation though. So what can we do to improve or protect the township's financial health? Well, nearly every community that is in excellent financial health today, they all have one thing in common. They perform a 3 to 5 year look into the future. So it can be done by two ways: multi-year budget or financial projection. In most of the communities that I've been in, we use multi-year budgeting. Okay, key takeaway. Annual budget is where township officials will influence the financial direction of the local unit. Focus of discussion should be on service levels, accomplishment of goals and objectives, results or outcomes, not just on line item dollar amounts. And you can usually expect actual results to be somewhat better than the budget. Okay, I've been preparing detailed municipal treasury budgets since 1985. My budgets are sufficiently detailed so I've never ever had one publicly questioned or not approved by the governing body. I've been managing managing municipal-wide multi-year budget preparation since 2009. And in Dearborn, I was responsible for managing the citywide revenue budget. This is a slide from my last presentation, and it's still a budget reality. You know, whether it's from the citizens at large or wherever it's coming from, budgets will always be subjective and reflect a certain amount of political choices. So the last time I said, do we know what the difference between special interest and the squeaky wheel is? And it's money. So. One of the things I'd like to say is that municipal employees are the key to success. Elected officials come and go, but township employees remain, and they make the wheels of government turn every day. And elected officials they'll be judged based on how well employees perform. And smart managers surround themselves with competent people and make sure they have the tools and resources necessary to do the job. And I'm here to say that lack of experience and uninformed political agendas can spell disaster for communities, especially when employees are minimized, devalued, or just don't have strong skill sets. And I think you're going to have some of that big time in Plymouth Township. So I would much rather have that picture up there than that one down there. So these are some of the things that I've done related to municipal employees. The first time when I was an elected official back in Harrison Township, previous township boards gave favored employees raises by promoting them to positions that didn't match their job duties or skill sets. So I had to go in and conduct a general employee's job compensation and classification study, and then negotiate that into the next union contract. So that was pretty well received because most of those employees were very unhappy with that political environment. One of the other things that I did was to implement a wage parity schedule with performance standards and monitoring, which resulted in a stable part-time workforce. I did this at Dearborn, and I did it primarily because the part-time clerks were being paid significantly less than the full-time clerks, but they were performing the same work. And so we had a lot of turnover that impacted our efficiency and our customer service. This is another slide from my last presentation, and these are all of the symptoms of dysfunction, and I'm here to tell you that most of these challenges will disappear with good management and budgeting practices and policies and procedures compliant with statute. Summary. Critical items for success. We need a strategic management plan. What are we going to do? Policies and procedures. How are we going to do it legally? Budget, your financial plan. When are we going to do it and with what financial resources? Operations. With who and what will we do it? And finally, our financial reporting. How did we do? It's not hard. It can be complicated, but it's not hard. So what's the bottom line? I'm a professional municipal treasurer. I'm not a politician. I'll say this forever. I don't have a machine working to get me elected, so it's to your advantage to support me. And so how you can support me, if you would like to do that, is you can spread the word to voters that I'm the best candidate for treasurer. If you'd like the help of my campaign, there's my phone number and my email address, and vote for me on November 8th. That's it.